Hello and welcome to the Vandy 24/7 podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm Chris Lee, joined by special guest Will Perdue today. We're going to talk with Will about a lot of stuff around Vanderbilt basketball. Before we get there, a reminder, our title sponsor for 2026 is Sylvan Park Ventures, a Nashville-based investment firm partnering with entrepreneurial companies and real estate opportunities through thoughtful growth capital and long-term relationships. Find out more at Sylvan Park Ventures. That's SYLVAN, sylvanparkventures.com. With Will today, we will talk about lineup changes to Vanderbilt basketball as affected by the injuries to Duke Miles and Frankie Collins. Before we do that, a reminder, basketball season is presented to you by the Wash House. Commodore fans, don't waste your weekends stuck doing laundry when you could be cheering on the Doors. At the Wash House Laundry Center, we got your back with our brand new pickup and delivery service. We'll pick it up, wash it, fold it, drop it back off, fresh, clean, and game day ready. It's perfect for busy students, fans, and Nashville families on the go. Schedule your pickup now at washhouseclean.com and anchor down with the Wash House Laundry Center. Steve Andrews, a good buddy of mine. Great guy, runs a great business. Help out those who help out the show, and I think you'll be very pleased. Our football coverage is presented by former Vanderbilt kicker Joe Bulovas with Bulovas Wealth Management of Raymond James. If there's one thing we all share, it's that our lives are all unique. At Raymond James, we believe that is worth celebrating because financial planning isn't just about numbers and figures. It's about creating the life you envision. Whether you're building a future or preparing for retirement, a Raymond James financial advisor can guide you through each step of the way, all while following a plan that is uniquely yours. That is life well planned. To learn more, call financial advisor Joe Bulovas with Bulovas Wealth Management of Raymond James, 615-645-6742, Raymond James and Associates, members, New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. Looking for baseball sponsors. If you're interested, reach out to me at chrislee70@gmail.com. I think a couple of you have done that, and I need to get back to you, which I will do this week. Will Perdue, you guys watching know him as a former SEC Player of the Year, Athlete of the Year at Vanderbilt, star for the Bulls and the Spurs. Will, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Chris, glad to be here, man. Glad we're back on a little winning streak. We got on that 3-game schneid, but seems like they've turned the corner, which is a good thing.
Now, are you in Chicago at the moment?
Yes, sir, and it currently is 9 degrees. I'm not sure it's much better there because you guys got a lot of that ice, which we didn't get. I got about 12 inches of snow at my house. It's a little shoveling, but it wasn't too bad.
All right, let's talk about Kentucky. I mean, just wild to see Vanderbilt. I don't even think playing its best game and beating Kentucky by 25. No, some of that had to do with Kentucky just was awful. But to see Vanderbilt down at second leading score, beating Kentucky by 25 points was not something you see often.
No. Hold on a second.
Sure.
Let me go ahead and do this because somebody's looking for attention here.
Oh, got you. Oh, nice. Yeah, mine is in another room.
She keeps putting her toy in my hand because she wants to play catch. So I'm trying to get her to, understand that I'm trying to do a podcast, but that doesn't always work.
No.
Let me go back to, I think it's the Kentucky game and the Mississippi State game. Let me preface all this by saying that this team goes 16-0, right? And the core is still the same, but because of the work that Coach Byington did in the off season, like taking the team to Vegas as a whole to see the UFC guys and no phone rules, stuff like that. This team is very tight. And in the NBA, I think that's not as important, right? But in college, I think it's very important for these guys not so much to like each other, but to get along with each other and to understand what the main goal is, right?
Yeah.
So I think the perfect example, as you said, let's start with the Kentucky game. Kentucky is not unified. You could tell by the way they play that they're not playing for one another. They're playing for each other, right? And when you see the way Vanderbilt played to go 16-0, and then they hit the speed bump and, Texas, Florida, and Arkansas, it was kind of a wake-up call, right? They got humbled in all three of those games. And sometimes, and I think we all can agree in this day and age, it's just hard to be able to block out all the noise, especially when you're playing well, you're top 10. You see what's being said on social, you see what's being printed, you see what people are talking about on podcast, right? This team is doing very well. They're climbing up the ranks. But they took some punches, some standing 8 counts. They didn't get knocked out, but they kind of realized that, hey, maybe, and it's not that they're not as good as they think they are. I really think they are. I think this is a very good team. But I think what it showed in the Mississippi State and Kentucky game are perfect examples of, because of this team's lack of height, right? And if you go back and look at why they struggled in those 3 games, right? Texas, I don't even know how you say Matas's last name, but the 7-footer for Texas, 22.7 rebounds. Florida, Alex Condon kills them in the second half, 6'10", 6'11", 16 and 8, right? Arkansas, Trayvon Brazil, Malik Ewan, 6'10" guys. It's just that Arkansas team is a terrible matchup for Vanderbilt. Terrible. And that's what you got to be concerned about once this team gets into the NCAA tournament, right? So how do you fight that when you're playing a team that might be more athletic, has more length, and is more physical? You have to do a solid job on the defensive end. And that's what they didn't do in these other games. And they got to rebound better, right? So I know this is a long answer, but you talked about Kentucky. What did they do against Kentucky? They came out from the get-go, landed some body shots. Kentucky dropped the gloves and just they knocked them down. And Kentucky wanted nothing to do with it. They didn't respond. And they're like, you know what? Not tonight. Vanderbilt, it's kind of like they played. And this is one of the things that Johnny Bach used to talk about when I was with the Chicago Bulls. We had what was called the Doberman defense, right? Because he talked about the pressure on the perimeter, the proper rotations on the backside in case somebody gets beat, on isolation, or somebody gets knocked off on a screen roll. He said, you need to play defense like your next meal depends on it, right? Let's go back 2 years ago, not this year's team, but last year's team. Everything they did was offensive oriented. If they had trouble knocking down shots, it affected the intensity on the defensive end. This year, for the those first 16 games, it was totally opposite, right? Because of the fact, and I think you mentioned it, what Tyler Tanner, Duke Miles, what these guys, were doing, Frankie Collins were doing on the perimeter, right? Picking guys up at half court, sometimes full court, making them having to bust their ass just to get the ball down the court. Now time has gone off the shot clock, and you're limiting the number of options they have on offense. And then their opponents were a lot of times taking bad contested shots. And I'm not saying they got away from that, but injury to Frankie Collins, that's huge, right? Guys have had to step up. But just real quickly in the Kentucky game, right? You hold Kentucky to 32% from the field. You hold Mississippi State to 34% from the field. You rebound Kentucky, which you didn't do, against Arkansas, Florida, or Texas, right? And then also it's what you're doing on the defensive end. You had 17 Mississippi State turnovers for 28 points. And you also had 15 Kentucky turnovers for 28 points. And that leads to, fast break points. That leads to points in the paint. That's all huge for this team, right? So, yeah, they can be very, they can struggle from three. But if they continue to play the way they did on defense the first 16 games, and then these last 2, They can honestly beat anybody regardless of size, but that just tells you how important it is on the defensive end because defense travels. And
Yeah.
last thing, when you go to that tournament, you're ready and prepared for that first game because you've had a week to prepare. You basically have, from the time that first game is over, you have 36 hours to prepare for your next opponent. Now, you kind of look and you go, okay, we're going to play either Team A or Team B. So you kind of have scouting reports prepared, but you really don't look at those teams until after that first game. So that's where you got to rely on, okay, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We know our defense will put us in a position to win that next game 48 hours later because of
Yeah.
the intensity and the veracity and the physicality of which we play with. And that'll keep us into the game until our offense figures out their defense and we start knocking down shots.
It's almost been like watching different teams. You look at the 16-0 start, particularly when they had Collins and Miles fully healthy, and it was you're going fast, you're hitting shots from all over the floor, you're using a lot of steals to set up a lot of easy transition buckets. Now, look, they've now lost Collins, who took a big chunk out of that, not just him being on the court, but that was rest for Miles and Tanner. Now, Miles is gone too, so you're putting a lot on Tyler Tanner. And so really, and this is 2 years in a row too, Will, where that has not worked as well in conference games. I think I'm not going to say they've stat padded, but a lot of their steal numbers have been racked up against opponents who just weren't ready to handle it. You get in the SEC the last 2 years, those steal numbers have dropped against better guards, which you would expect, right? That's not saying that they're not legitimately good defensively at doing those things, but it's harder to do it against better guards. So that's one thing, how that whole dynamic has changed. And you fast forward to Tuesday when they go, with Miles out, their starting lineup is Tanner, who's probably 5'11-ish. Then they go nickel and Okereke, who reached 6'7". You've got McLaughlin, who's 6'8", and Washington, who is 6'10 or 6'11". Like, it is a much different lineup.
Mm-hmm.
You're bigger across the board, maybe not coincidentally, although Miles was part of this in the Mississippi State game. You held Mississippi State and Kentucky to their lowest point totals of the season. And then in the second half, and I'm sorry for the long preamble here, you watch them, and they are like the last 8 minutes, they just took the air out of the ball. Now, Kentucky was completely willing to let them do that. It was kind of astonishing. But, like, they go from this team that plays fast, uses guard play to get transition to, like, they're this big team that Kentucky can't handle the physicality. They're winning the rebound battle, and then they're just slowing the ball down to just run out the clock. It was not even like watching the same team. And I'm not saying that's bad. I think it's really good, because they've showed to me that they can now win games in two completely opposite manners with two completely different lineup makeups.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% because that's the thing. Let's go back to the NCAA tournament last year. What happened with St. Mary's, right? St. Mary's slowed it down, right? They made sure that they used a lot of clock on the offensive end of the floor, meaning 7, 8, 9, 10 passes, constantly moving the ball from one side of the floor to the other, and just waiting for your defense to back down. They were very, very, very disciplined. And that's troublesome because, like Tom Thibodeau used to say when he was with the Bulls and with the Knicks, it's not about the first effort or the second effort or the third effort, but it's when your defense is on point, it's the fifth effort, the sixth effort, the seventh effort. Because all of a sudden you're focused, you lose Wayne, a guy cuts back door, something happens. And that's one of the things you saw in that Texas game, in the Arkansas game. Something that normally doesn't happen with this team, guys getting beat backdoor because they're focused, they're on point. And you were just, they looked like a totally different team, right? Now, mentally, when you're constantly winning games and the pressure of winning the next one and the next one, and you finally saw Nebraska lost to Michigan, right? That weighs on you because the expectations continue to rise. Regardless of what was said at the beginning of the season, the goalposts constantly move compared to how you're playing, right? You just can't change that. And and then once you get into the top 10, you're like, holy shit, we're a top 10 team. Nobody's refuting it. There's no arguments. All right. And then there's more pressure because all of a sudden against these teams, even though you're on the road, you should beat Texas because on paper, you're better than them, but you didn't. Right. Florida, I think we saw Florida might have played their best game of the year against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Right. Arkansas played really, really well, shot the ball well. But I can go through all the numbers about out-rebounded points in the paint, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? So what that tells you is as good as this Vandy team is, and I want to be very clear, this is a very good team. And let me put this in here right now. Let me stop for a second and say, but because of the depth that is necessary to continually win, not just play in the SEC, but win in the SEC. It's like a battle of attrition, right? It's not just Vanderbilt that's facing this. It's every 10 in the SEC, every team in the SEC, every team in the Big Ten. You're seeing the ACC is kind of starting to turn things around after what happened last year, right? And then once you get into the tournament, those teams in the tournament are there because they're playing well. There are some teams that back into the tournament. They've lost 3 or 4 in a row, but because they played well early on, and then they get that week of practice and they turn things around. So you don't necessarily have to have your A game going into the tournament, but you got to have your A minus B plus game on a nightly basis. But hold on.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that's why, and I hate to say this because I'm kind of on the fence on this, but I've accepted that this is the landscape now. This is why NIL is so important, right? And again, I know these are some long answers, but think about the Bulls when we won those 6 championships, all right? I wasn't there for the last 3, but I was there for the first 3. And what did we have? In an 82-game season, you had guys playing 90% of the regular season games, not missing playoff games. Health. We were at the top of the list as fewest amount of games missed because of injury. That's huge. Go back and look at the Lakers when they won. The year I won with the Spurs in 99, right in the top 5 of fewest games missed because of injury. And that's why NIL is so important, not just to pay the starters, but you kind of alluded to it. You may look good on paper from 1 to 5. And a perfect example would be the Phoenix Suns in the NBA. Think about how good they looked on paper from 1 to 5, right?
Yeah.
With Beal, with the guys they had, but then Beal got hurt, KD got hurt, right? All of a sudden, you're relying on your bench. Well, guess what you don't have? Because of the salary cap. You don't have a bench. But that's so important in this, and I'm glad you brought it up because this is where I think that Mark has to now he's got to step out on the ledge a little bit. And it's not a criticism. It's just, and I think you've seen that, his hand has been forced because of the Frankie Collins injury and now the Duke Miles injury. But this is where you talk about these guys like Chandler Bing's you got to start finding ways to get this guy some minutes, right? Harris, Mike James, Washington. This is where you got to really start leaning on your guys. And this is also the importance of the assistant coach's role is to really now start monitoring the minutes. Because what you can do as a coach is you can be like, all right, Tyler, we're gonna bump your minutes up a little bit. What you're hoping you can do is actually reduce his minutes a little bit because of the injuries, because you just don't want to put more stress on his body and the way that they're playing. And I love the fact that, he played the freshman, Jaden Leverett, if I'm saying that properly. I know it was in spot minutes, but at the end of the day, he's a big body. He's 6'11", right? He can protect the rim. He can foul guys. I don't mean, by any means he's not a good player, but it's just, I was the same way. Just you adapt. It's tough to adapt to the speed and the strength of guys that are in the SEC. But that's where now, okay, what's Mark going to do? What are the assistants going to do? And that's why you hear these coaches hammer about development. And that's where now you have to try to find a way what games are left in the SEC to try to develop some more of these guys coming off the bench because of now injuries to Frankie Collins, Duke Miles. And their return there's no hard date on their return. It's to be determined.
Yeah. But I wanted to dive into the NIL part of that in just a minute, but a couple of questions. Do you have any? I think you probably just gave me your best answer. Any idea on when they get Collins and Miles back? I'm guessing it's a couple of weeks.
Well, my understanding was everything that I've seen and heard, and when I've talked to some guys, initially they thought maybe Collins was just done, right?
Oh wow, okay.
But then my understanding is that okay, wait a minute, that's not the case. But they're being very careful and bringing him along slowly, right? Because when they bring him back, he's not going to be 100%. So don't expect the same Frankie Collins that you saw. But B, they want to make sure that when they do bring him back, he can still be impactful, and you're not doing something to him from a health perspective long term,
Yeah.
right? Miles, honestly, I have no idea. It's just I think that as a fan and as the coaches, as hard as it is, and instead of looking back and being like, well, when are they coming back? I need them in the lineup. You just have to approach it like, okay, those guys are done for the season, right? And if they do come back, it's icing on the cake. And again, like your reaction, I'm not saying I have inside information and it's 100% accurate. I'm just going by, tea leaves, what people are saying, supposedly people that know. There's only one person that knows, Frankie Collins. That's it. And Duke Miles.
They're a little what's the word? Because I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. They're a little vague with injuries at times.
But you have to be, right? Because
and I get it. Yeah.
It's the NBA's the same way. That's just like I love hockey, right? Hockey lists lower body.
Lower body.
What the hell's that? What's
anywhere.
lower body? Is it knee? Is it a hamstring? Is it a quad? Is it
yeah?
What is it? So that's just it is what it is. But that's why I'm saying is that if you choose to focus on when Frankie Collins and Duke Miles are coming back, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Because what you need to focus on is that team that's on the floor. Because real quick, what's the thing about playing Ole Miss somewhere? What's happening there?
Well, I've been hearing for a couple of days that game is going to get moved to Birmingham. And originally the thought was they were going to play it in Birmingham on Friday.
Is that because of the weather again?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ole Miss is the campus is shut down until October the 8th, and they're using
till when?
Not October. That would be a long time. February the 8th. How about that instead? I don't know where October came from, but yes. So they're using the arena as a warming center. But I talked to somebody pretty high up in the league office yesterday who said, well, they'll make a decision by late afternoon Thursday. I didn't ask. That told me that they want to try to have it in Ole Miss. Maybe the conditions have gotten a lot better in the last 48 hours to where they can play there. I mean, it's going to be a complicated situation either way, right?
Yeah, what are they going to do? Bus all those people to the mall during the game?
Well, the other thought was they might bring them to Nashville, have the game in Nashville because they play Ole Miss a second time, so flop home games. Well, then you put Vanderbilt in a little spot here too where you got some of your fans without power. You're more able to play the game on your campus, I think. But so I don't know where it's going to settle.
Well, I think the best thing to do is just you have to play it in a neutral spot, period.
Yeah, well, that would be
I think that's the best answer. I know that sucks for Ole Miss, right? But you can't control Mother Nature. So I think what the league is trying to do is make sure they can secure a location, right?
Yeah.
That they can have this game with as few problems as possible. And let's just say that happens, okay? And I'm going to put this out there. If they do that, right, I personally feel like that Vanderbilt University, and I know this is going to cost money, should bus as many students as possible to wherever that game is. Because it's I feel like that's because now what you've seen, and this is what I'm also impressed with now, right? And I know they're kind of encouraging fans to go with T-shirts and pizza and giveaways and all this stuff. But that's just the landscape now. But I think now that school's back in, we're not dealing with finals. We're not dealing with all this stuff. Once it's announced where the game is, I personally feel like to show that you really care about the fans and the students and everybody being at the games. I know they're still not selling out, but the attendance is much, 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 much better. line up buses and say, whoever wants to go to the game, here we go. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's huge because I
like it.
think that sends a huge message to the fan base about how important it is that we need them back into the fold on a nightly basis. And so much so that we're willing to take these buses and go down to Birmingham, enjoy the game, and then come on back. Because what do you see when you see schools going to football playoff games, NCAA tournaments? A lot of these schools do this, right? So now set the precedence right now that this is what we're planning to do. And us, like all the other schools that are serious about sports, right? We're going to take our fan base and we're going to mobilize them and send them down to Birmingham or wherever this game is. Now, if it's within a reasonable distance, right? And I think this is something that will totally catch people off guard. I think it sends a solid message, and I think it's something that they really need to consider.
Yeah, I think that'd be a wonderful idea. And admission's free, so you're not, once you get down there, you're not out any money for tickets. So,
yeah, but at the same time, you have enough sponsors
free
to where you can get your sponsors to jump on board, throw in a box lunch, whatever it is, right?
Sure. Make it a fun trip that you just
and
go and
maybe
and
you get some people that don't normally go, but they're like, well, what else am I going to do on a Friday or Saturday with weather? Right.
Yeah, do it for fans too.
It's just like I talked to a friend of mine and I'll throw George's name out there. George Plaster doesn't have power, right? And he lives down the street from Vanderbilt. He's not within 2 minutes, but he's not very far down West End Avenue to where he lives. He's downtown living in a hotel. So he's not the only one. So this is a great way to take these people from what is a terrible situation that they cannot control and actually give them something to do. And I guarantee you they'll enjoy it.
Sorry. I'll text my wife something quickly. By the way, what kind of, I've got an airport run coming up in an hour. She's making sure I'm ready for that. Are we going to be still talking an hour? I don't want to run you in it. I mean, I think you and I could do that, honestly.
Well, I think, we'll try to cut this off at an hour and go from there. But, I got a little sidetracked, but I mean, it just hit me. I was like, if that truly happens, this is a great way for Vanderbilt to step up to the plate.
Well, don't feel bad about it. Shows they go where they go. If you got a good topic or something that's not on the script, you just let them go there. And I know we got mailbag questions, and I've got a few for you too. And we've also got to have the NIL talk. But
well, let's save the mailbag for the last 15 minutes.
We'll do that for sure.
So that means we got 15 minutes to go until we hit the mailbag. But let's talk about all this other stuff.
Well, I want to ask you specifically about Jaden Leverett and Chandler Bean.
Yeah, hold on a second. Can you hit pause for 1 second?
Yeah. Or I'll go ahead. I'll tell you, I'll give you a minute. I'll go ahead and get some ad reads in to buy you some time. How about that?
I got to go for some reason, the dog's going crazy. I think she needs
the
to go
dogs
out.
Always go crazy. Yeah. When we get into our mailbag momentarily, it's going to be presented to you by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Our guest line is presented by a friend of the show, John Levin and Womble Bond Dickinson. We appreciate their sponsorship also. Will is on the guest line presented by those guys. I'm going to get to the mailbag again in just a minute. I have a couple more for Will to ask myself. If you got specific questions about NIL, those are a topic we can get into. And I'm going to go ahead and pull some stuff up on the board to get ready for that while I'm stalling for time for Will to get ready. Pet interruptions are kind of a regular part of the show, I feel like. It's usually on my end. But if you got anything in the questions or comments, we got 100 of you here. I see. Drop those in the chat, too. We usually do the ones on the board at 9247 first. And looks like we got about a dozen of those. We may or may not be able to get to all of those today. But we'll give it our best. Anyway, as we're stalling for Will here.
Can you come get this dog?
Oh, man.
Next door to the dog's house, so she was whining like crazy, and now she won't come in. And I'm trying to do this. Did you hear that?
We heard all of it. This is the first time my pet has not been the problem on this show.
Come
on. Yeah, I can't mute Will. He has to do that on his end. This is pretty funny, honestly.
All right, go with Mom. Come on, let's go. So my dog and the neighbor's dog have a relationship through the fence.
Okay.
So when the neighbor's dog always seems to know when Birdie's out, and Birdie always seems to know when the neighbor's dog is out. So that's why she was whining, because she wanted to get out. And they talk in between the fence. They look through the cracks of the wooden fence.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So I apologize for that. This podcast is all over the place.
Yeah, live shows stuff always happens. But I want to ask you about Leverett and Bing. First of all, just their contributions, particularly on the defensive end. And also, like, I think this is one of these things, like, sometimes injuries offer you a blessing. Like, they've got a pretty good freshman class coming in next year. And now you got a chance to kind of give proof of concept to two guys. I mean, Leverett needs to get in better shape. And you got an off season for that. But, like, now you got two guys that, like, you gave a chance to play some minutes, see how they fit in the system. You know, they've done some good things. I think this maybe helps them out a little bit next year too.
Oh no, there's no doubt about it. But like you talked about, it's not just about Leverett. I mean, it's listen. It's kind of interesting. I'll give you an example real quick. Like my son, when he was in high school as a freshman, right? He played JV lacrosse, and at the end of the year, they bumped him up because he had a really good season. But as a freshman, he was only 15 years old. And all of a sudden now he gets bumped up to varsity, right? And all of a sudden now he's playing against 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And you could see the significant difference in not only body type, but speed, strength, right? So he didn't really play a lot. It's the same thing about Leverett. I mean, he's 6'11", he's a big guy, right? But his footwork needs to improve, right? Like you said, he probably needs to get in a little better shape. You know, and it's just, there's a process to this happening. I'm a perfect example, right? I came in, at the time, I was 6'10", 195. I had to adapt. I had to get stronger. I had to put on weight. I was a late bloomer, right? We don't know where Leverett falls in. He's already got the body, but now you've got to mold the body. And at the same time, he's got to adapt to the speed of which the game is now played in the SEC, not high school, in the SEC. So that's where Mark has to identify. And this is why off-season times and practice times are so important for him, because he doesn't play a lot of minutes. They need practice time. This is where you have your 2-on-2, 3-on-3 games. And this is where the assistance becomes so important, because the individual time you spend with these guys during practice, outside of practice, when you have some off days, guys can come in and get some individual work. But also, as you talked about with Bing, you know, he got to play 20 minutes the other night, was very productive in my opinion. He's obviously got a solid body at 6'7", right? Or 6'5". You got to carve some minutes out for this guy. But also at the same time, we're talking about Tyler Harris, right?
Yeah.
Washington's got to be more consistent coming off the bench. As you talked about Okiriki, he's really is the guy that I'm pointing at now that really needs to step up. And it's not so much about we need these guys to be really, really productive from a statistical standpoint, but what we need is consistency, so that when Mark turns around, when somebody picks up their second foul in the first half or something happens, it's a situational time frame, Mark can turn around and be like, you know, he's not flipping a coin, but he feels confident about, I'm going with Bing, I'm going with Harris, I'm going with this guy because of what's going on. Because now, and what people don't realize is coaches just watch tape over and over because they're trying to pick up something that all of a sudden they missed before. It's about their offense, it's about their defense, but about individual work as well. And these are where now we talk about, again, NIL is so important, because you got to get the good guys in first, but you also got to get the guys coming off the bench that have potential. It's a dangerous word because now it depends on the coaches to develop these guys, right? But you also have to have the ability and the financial means to stock your bench, just like when you go to the store, you stock your cupboard. You
Yeah.
know, how many cans of corn do you have in your cupboard that you may not even touch the ones in the back? But in case of a situation like this, right, in Nashville, ice, no power, roads are tough. You don't have to go out because you've stocked the cupboard. You have injuries. How stocked is your cupboard? A lot of teams out there in the SEC and other Power Five conference schools, I guess Power Four now, their cupboards are pretty bare, right? Remember we mentioned the
Yeah.
Phoenix Suns is what they had. You know, their starting lineup was probably the best in the league, but once guys started getting hurt, they were in big trouble. Did they ever make it to the finals? No. Did they win a championship? No. So there's a formula for it, but the problem is just health is a big part of it. And because you know as a coach, there's going to be some attrition. You got to have guys coming off the bench that through, as you and I both talk about now, these guys are here for both terms of summer school. They basically step on campus in June, and you don't officially start practicing for basketball, until late September, early October, right? You've got all that time to develop these guys, and I think Mark did a great job. The problem is he can't control injuries. What
Yeah.
he's got to do is control the rotation, finding ways to carve minutes out for guys. And the more games they have, like Mississippi State, Kentucky, where they have blowouts, you can get these guys some experience because it's kind of interesting, right? When you talk about college, let me go back and people can go look this up. I think the year Louisville won their national championship, was that 2015,
I think it was 13.
13? And they beat Michigan, right, in Atlanta?
Sounds about right.
I
Peyton
was at the
Siva, that
game.
much? Yeah.
Right. I lived in Louisville at the time. I kind of followed them. I got invited to go. I rode on somebody's coattails, went to the game. Do you know who might have been the MVP of that game? A walk-on.
Yeah. Yeah.
A guy
The
by the
wing
name
kid.
of Tim Henderson.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
You're like, who? Look it up. He hit 2 huge threes coming off the bench. A walk-on. Because the guy's practiced his ass off all year, hardly played, but the one thing that Patino knew was he could rely on this kid if necessary. Again, in case of emergency, break glass, right?
Yeah.
I know people were like, man, Patino went on a whim and threw this guy in. Somewhat, yes, but he's also seen this guy all year in practice. Guy steps up and hits 2 big threes. What else did he do? Not much. But the timing was impeccable, and they end up beating Michigan and win a championship. That's what I mean about having the time frame to develop your bench. Another example of that, just something that hasn't worked out, right? I talked to Mark about, Mason Nicholson, the kid from Jacksonville State, right? 6'10",
Yeah.
288. He talked about if we can get this kid on campus, we can get him into shape, and we can develop him, he could help us late in the season. Late in the season. But what happened? He got hurt. Setback. Probably never see the kid, right? Because it's just, he got so far behind because of injury, and it's not his fault. It's not Mark's fault. It's just something that happens. It's just kind of like, when you're driving down the highway and you're in the right lane doing 55 with your hazards on, right? And everybody else is flying by at 80 miles an hour. That's kind of what it's like in the SEC.
Yeah.
If you're not ready, that's what happens. And every game that you can't play is basically 2 games that you get set back of when you could possibly step on the floor and help. And I think, unfortunately, you took a flyer on this kid. There was a possibility if he stayed healthy and worked his ass off, which he was doing. But then once he got hurt, it just kind of, it set things back. And now I don't think he'll ever have an opportunity to catch up to get to where he can really step on the floor and contribute. So what does that do? That takes that spotlight off Nicholson and puts it on Leverett. Now, he's only a true freshman and he's young, but at the same time now, how do I get this guy in there so he can kind of cut his teeth? So when the SEC tournament comes up, because that's the other thing, right? How important is it to win games in the SEC in the tournament? Because then you're night after night after night. And if things go well, you only have to play 3 games to win a championship.
Yeah.
I know it's a grind to go 3 games in a row and then have a couple days off and then get to the tournament. But I think, in my opinion, and what I've experienced just personally, you want to be playing well going into the tournament. And let me be very clear. You can be playing well and get to the SEC tournament and lose and not make it to the championship game, or lose in the championship game and have it not be detrimental, right? You're a team that's on its way to the NCAA tournament. You roll into the SEC tournament or the Big Ten tournament or the ACC tournament, and you lose that first game. That could be detrimental to a team from a mental standpoint, right? Because that's like a serious punch in the gut, right? Somebody kicks you in the groin and totally unexpected can really put this team off in a spiral. So you want to play as well as you can and win as many games as you can in the SEC tournament. So you're playing well going into the tournament. That's just, but you can still, again, I'll just leave it at this. You can still play well and lose, and mentally you can recover from that quickly. Because, emotionally you're drained, but then as soon as your coach shows you that film and you're like, we actually played pretty well, but that team shot like 60% from 3 or hit a half-court shot or whatever, you can recover quickly because you got 4 days until that first game. So that's not the part. The part is, are you playing well and are you healthy going into not only the SEC tournament but the NCAA tournament? And if you're not healthy, do you have that necessary depth? And these guys have got enough experience, so now you trust them as we go into the postseason.
Will, before we hit the mailbag to end this, I know that the next few weeks with the Nashville Basketball Initiative are really key. The portal opens right when the season's over. You've got to be ready to pounce. Just talk about the importance of people helping what you guys are doing and anything else in that space that you'd like to discuss here.
Well, I think this Vanderbilt team is a perfect example, right? I mean, I got to give Mark a lot of credit. And let me talk about not Mark Byington, the coach. I'm very impressed with that, but Mark Byington, the general manager, right? He went out and identified specifically Frankie Collins and Duke Miles, guys that when they're on the floor together and they go with a small lineup, what they have the advantage of is, you talk about, there's all these terminologies, right? Tyler Tanner's now the head of the snake, right? And as Tyler goes, his team goes. But when you had the luxury of Duke Miles and Frankie Collins and you had that 3-guard rotation, they had something that no other team in the country had, right? 3 dogs, 3 alpha males, right?
Yep.
Guys that wanted and desired to get up in their man. Guys that love to play defense, right? Yeah, everybody loves to score, but these guys would feed off the adrenaline of playing defense, making the steal, shutting somebody down, forcing them to pick up their dribble and pass it off. A lot of teams don't have that dog, right? They had 3 of them. Well, now 2 of the 3 are on the sideline. So who's got to step up? And that's why NIL is so important. When Mark puts that GM hat back on, the first thing he does is he goes, okay, how much money do I have in the bank? That's a problem, right? Because it's just like when Mark signed his contract to come to Vanderbilt, right? Candace said, okay, here's your pot of money for your assistants. The athletic department doesn't determine how much Mark pays the assistants. Mark does, right? And depending on how much you value a specific assistant, they make more than others. It's just how things work, right? Not that Mark wanted me to bring that up, but it's the same thing with players, right? You identify players and I guarantee you, Mark's either he's got a board in his room, he's got one at home locked in a closet so nobody else sees it. But every player in Division I right now is being ranked by Vanderbilt, by Arkansas, by Kentucky, because they know all these guys are going to hit the portal. And when it's kind of like on your phone, right? You have reminders set when something happens. Ding! Your phone, gives you an alert. And you're like, oh, something just went on sale. Ding! All of a sudden, so and so hit the portal. Ding!
Shooting guards, aisle 4.
That's right. Lights go off, your phone they're doing the same thing. But the one thing that Mark has to have is he's got to have the resources. in order to be able to go after these guys, right? Because I do believe that a Vanderbilt education and the alumni network that Vanderbilt has is a plan B. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that plan B is only important to the parents if an education is important to the parents.
Uh-huh.
Because every kid has the dream of playing in the NBA. So where do I go to be able to play, to show my skill set and play in the NBA? Is it Vanderbilt? Is it Kentucky? Right? Is it Memphis? Where is it? Number one. Number two, if I'm a really good college player, and I'm not a first round draft pick, I'm a second round pick, or maybe unrestricted free undrafted free agent. How do I make my bag before I even attempt to go to the NBA? Because maybe I'm a fringe NBA guy, but I'm really good in college. Well, I'm going to go wherever I get the most money, because you know what I can do then? What does every kid want the opportunity to do? Buy your parents a car, a house, or be able to return the favor of the sacrifices that they made. So I'm not saying that Mark Byington needs an endless bag of money, but what he does need, he needs money. And it's not just him, it's Kentucky, Arkansas. But what you're seeing is, real quick, who are the teams at the top of the list in the SEC right now?
Arkansas, Florida, Vanderbilt,
Florida, Alabama, right?
Yep.
What do these teams have? It's reported they have between 8 to 10 to 12 million in NIL money. How much does Vanderbilt have? I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that Mark will be given $2.7 million from revenue share. Okay? And if he needs to be and I'm not talking about to be a good team, to be a contender. And when I mean contender, I mean a true team that can actually compete for a championship, a Final Four team. How about we use that term, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the schools are hoping for, that we reduce the amount of money we pay these kids. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, because that CDC, I don't even know what the hell that stands for. There's a bunch of schools that don't want to sign it, because then that puts limitations on them, right? So it's like, as a neighbor, right? I look to my left, I look to my right. I want to keep up with the Joneses. I want to keep up with the Smiths, right? See how nice their lawn looks? I need my lawn to look better. And it's not just about sweat equity. It's about, I need to go and get it, I need to get it resodded, right?
Yeah.
Or, whatever it may be. So it's, you don't need endless funds, because that's not going to happen at Vanderbilt. It's just not. And it's not sustainable. But right now, Mark's doing a hell of a job. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like, oh my God, I don't want to think about this. But if we don't continue to help Mark, I'm not saying he's a tyrant and pounding his fist on the table and being like, I need money. But if you don't give him, he's got a great practice facility, right? That's check that off the list. I know that, Memorial is not a 20,000 seat, luxurious place to play, but it is a home court advantage. It is a hell of an atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
So he's checked that off the list. So what does he need? He needs the ability and resources to bring kids in. That's just the landscape, whether you like it or not. I'm not a big fan, but that's just the landscape. So I've decided to jump in and try to do what I can to try to help him as much as possible. He has those resources so he can go out and get the next Frankie Collins, the next Duke Miles, the next Tyler Tanner, or in this case, keep Tyler Tanner, right?
Yeah.
And there's only one way to do that. And you have to go through NIL to get that money. So what does that mean? He's going to get 2.7 from the university in revenue share. So basically what we're saying is he probably needs to generate and raise between $5 and $6 million on his own through NIL in order to truly continue to do what he's done. Win, but get better. Because the one thing I can tell you, in his eyes, in the players' eyes, in the fans' eyes, in the athletic department's eyes, in Diermeier's eyes, if they go to the NCAA tournament this year and don't get out of the first round, huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. But this is just, I'm not saying I know this, but I'm just telling you, this is how things work, right?
For sure.
How many schools, you may know the answer more than I do, how many schools have tried to take Clark Lee from Vanderbilt?
I don't know if he ever got an official offer. I know he had.
I'm not saying offer. I'm just saying how many schools have inquired.
Oh, I'm sure he was on the list of a number of teams of like, okay, if we, you may be a person of interest, I guess is a way to put it.
Well, they have to, there's a gray area. So he's a person of interest.
That sounded criminal. I didn't mean it to come across like that. Like, I'll tell you the one that I was concerned about.
Are you saying he's a criminal?
I'm not saying that. Let's get that perfectly clear. The one that I was concerned about is if it opened up, because there was a lot of talk about Marcus Freeman going to NFL. Was that if Notre Dame opened, that could have been,
Yeah, but let's give Candace credit. She stepped up and gave him a contract.
Right.
And yes, he was going to give Vanderbilt a discount because Vanderbilt did it. Nashville is his home, his family, his extended family, his friends, okay? But she stepped up to the plate and did what she had to do. Thank you very much to Candace and Diermeier. But now, okay, Mark did what he did last year. Totally flipped the script, took this team to the NCAA tournament. But let's be honest, much like Indiana, whose average age in football was 24, 25, correct?
With NIL. Been reported. Yeah.
Okay. St. Mary's was a much older team with a lot of international players. And that age and that experience paid dividends against Vanderbilt. Okay. Yeah. So you have to get experience, but you have to also get talent. And if Mark ever gets in a position, and I know, I'm going to be very clear, I know for a fact, Mark wants to stay in Nashville, period. When he makes the comment that I came here for a reason and I don't want to leave until I accomplish that reason, and that reason is taking a school to a place that they've never been, the Final Four and a national championship, what does that do to him, right? That guarantees he's going in the Hall of Fame as a coach. He might go anyways, and he probably will. But you don't think that what's the coach from Indiana that came from James Madison? Signetti?
Signetti. Mm-hmm.
You don't think he sent a text to Mark and said, yo, dude, look what I've done. You're next.
Yeah, they talk. Mark discussed that openly recently, which is
right,
kind of cool.
And I think that now that I've finally figured this out, you can honestly say those two are different birds.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if Signetti used hypnosis to kind of suck Mark in. But I think that Mark fully believes, and this is what I love about him, because when he took the job, I said, thank you very much for taking this job. This job is not for everybody. Because you're going to face a lot of obstacles, a lot of speed bumps. But at some point, Mark wants to win a championship, right? I mean, if you don't think he's locked in, go look at that Kentucky game. Remember that play where Kentucky threw the ball in underneath by Vanderbilt's basket, and then the guy walked out of bounds to throw it back in, and he sprinted down the sideline and was yelling at the official, and they were up already, 20-something?
Right.
Whatever. Don't tell me the dude's not locked in, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was laughing my ass off when I saw that, right? I thought he was going to pull a hamstring or, pop an Achilles. But at the end of the day, he's locked in. This is what he wants to do. But at some point, if you're sitting in your office or you're watching a game or you hang up the phone from talking to me or Candace, and you don't think that you're getting the proper support you need to truly be successful, Because let me ask you a question, Chris.
Okay.
And this stands for everybody that's watching this podcast. Doesn't matter. I mean, you've been doing this particular gig for how long?
The podcast is about a decade. If you throw the writing part in, I think we're at 23 years.
Okay. And you started this out of your own accord, correct?
Correct.
This is your baby.
Yep.
Right? You want to continue to develop this. But if FanDuel or somebody else, I don't know who came along, some other company comes along and it's a startup and they tell you, you know what? You can keep this what it is, but unfortunately, we're going to change the name, and they double your salary or they increase your salary that is impactful to you and your family. What do you think you're going to do?
The same thing everyone else would do.
Right. So you can talk about loyalty. You can talk about, it's not the same. I don't get to see some player for 4 years. I get that. But that's just not the way the landscape of college basketball is anymore. It's just not. That's my wife in the background getting ready to go to work. But so we have to have those resources. And if Mark doesn't have them, just like Clark Lee, who do you think's at the top of most people's list?
Yeah, if he hit the open market for vacancies, he would be a hot commodity. Now, the question I have is, I don't think Kentucky's going to open or, if a blue blood open, he would be a guy I would take a look at. Now, like if you're Mark, I don't know why you leave for a lateral move or something like that, which, I mean, frankly, you could argue. I don't know that I would. I would have to give it some thought. You could, but I think there's an argument there that it's a top 25 job now with the league, because they're in one of the two leagues you want to be in. And they've got the new practice facility, which is pretty amazing by everybody's estimation.
Oh, it's a top 25 job. It's in the SEC.
Yeah.
Right. But
it only takes one.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you truly are going to base your career on trying to win a championship, which they all are doing, right? To Dean Smith, to Bill Self, to, the list goes on, right? Adolph Rupp, blah, 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 Joby Hall, whatever, right? That's like the ultimate, right? Because when you win a championship and you win an NCAA championship, and then, like the NCAA tournament shows up in the Final Fours where they have all their coaches meeting. When you go to that coaches meeting, when you walk into the room parts. That's Mark Byington. He won a championship at Vanderbilt, nonetheless. How good is that dude? Right? That totally changes your aura, your perspective, what your peers think about you. Because that is important. Right?
Sure.
So if that's what you're measuring yourself on, and you're at a location that you don't think you're getting the proper resources in order to truly do that, then you're going to leave. But he's constantly going to make the statement that I want to win here. And when he says that, I truly believe him that that's going to happen. Right? But we've got to find ways to get him the resources. And I know this is a long answer, but this is something I'm passionate about. And it's trying to get people involved to where it's just like, hey, Vanderbilt's doing great. That's cool. But all right, I got to go. I got to go wait in line at Pancake Pantry for breakfast. I want that to be important to people. I want people, but this is now a way for people to be involved, not just emotionally, but financially. Right?
Yeah.
And be a part of those resources in order to help this team win a championship. Because I think it can be done. I think it is a top 25 job. But at the end of the day, if somebody steps up and wants to double his salary or even pay him the same salary, but guarantee him 10 to 12 million in NIL.
Yeah. You ready to get to the mailbag?
Here's another one. Let me close this part before we go to the mailbag. If Kentucky continues to struggle and Vanderbilt goes into Lexington. I think that will actually be Vanderbilt's first game of playing an opponent the second time, correct?
Yes.
If Vanderbilt and Mark Byington go into Lexington and beat Kentucky in Lexington after already beating them by 25, regardless if anybody wants to admit it or not, if you want to put your head in the sand, go right ahead. But he will be at the top of Vanderbilt's list.
Kentucky's.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew what I was going to say. The thing that is interesting, we're in an era where you could see Indiana and Nebraska win national championships in basketball and football this year, but just not the ones you would have thought. that to me is like the biggest.
Yeah, but Indiana's the perfect example.
Yeah.
The worst. What is it? What is the Division I FS, whatever it is?
They were, I think, coming into this season, they were the worst, or they'd either lost the most games or they were second losingest. I think they might have.
Well, I think they were the worst coming into last season, but after last season, now they're next to last.
Right.
But this season now bumped them up, or this season bumped them up to next to last. But they were the worst Division I program in football.
Yeah.
So,
and Nebraska's never won an NCAA tournament game and won, 21 in a row and almost won at Michigan.
Yeah, I was stunned by that Nebraska has never – and I actually have Nebraska this weekend. I have Illinois at Nebraska on Sunday, and I'm doing BYU at Kansas on Saturday. Again, I know we're harping on this, but look what NIL did to BYU.
Yeah. Oh, my God. The Isbanta kid from Boston is, yeah.
Now, I know it was reported that they paid him $7 to $8 million, and Mark Byington's never going to pay a kid $7 or $8 million. But talk about NIL, they stepped up, and look what it's doing to them. They're must watch.
By the way, are you going to Lincoln this weekend?
Yeah, so I actually fly to Kansas City tomorrow. I have BYU at Kansas and Lawrence on Sunday. Then we get in the car Sunday morning and drive to Lincoln, which is about 3 hours. And then I do Illinois at Nebraska on Saturday, and then I fly back home on Monday. That's all for Westwood One Radio. And the reason why that's happening, because the Illinois-Nebraska game was tacked on literally last week.
Have you been to Lincoln before? Go ahead, sorry.
No, you just got two highly ranked teams playing, in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they're like, "Oh, we got to grab that game." So they reached out and said, "Hey, can you guys jump in the car and go do that game after the Kansas game?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Because I played with Fred Hoiberg at Chicago. So
oh yeah,
it's awesome to see him. I knew his kids when they were really little. It's really good to see his son playing really well. The point guard of that team. So I'm excited to go to Lincoln. I have not been to Lincoln since 1988.
Oh, right. I remember that game. Yeah.
Everybody knows what happened in 1988. So I've not been there since then.
Well, you probably didn't spend any time out. Lincoln's kind of an underrated town. It's kind of like a Midwestern Chattanooga. You'll like it if you get a chance. So my wife went to school there, got 2 degrees. So we spent a ton of time. Oh, nice.
All right, let's get to the mailbag. That was supposed to start 15 minutes ago.
Right. All right. We'll do rapid fire round. May not be able to get to everybody here. Housebuster, during the ESPN broadcast of the Kentucky game, they said that 6'6" Chandler Bing is repping 275 on the bench press. That seems insanely strong for someone with long arms, and he's only a freshman. How impressed are you with that, or is that not so uncommon these days?
Well, if he was an offensive lineman, I'd be really impressed. Because what's the biggest thing? Maybe he's going to go and become a tight end if he doesn't make it in basketball, like we've seen some guys do, right? Yeah. Because as you talked about with the long arms, that's so important on defense, especially on the perimeter. But what that says to me is this is a strong kid that can be physical, right? But the question is, how quick is he? I've seen his work ethic. I like it. But that's, again, a guy that I think, quite honestly, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 5. By the time the SEC tournament gets here, we need that kid to be 6, a 6.5, a 7, as far as moving up the scale. So what comes with that? Continued practice, continued development, continued minutes, so that he can then produce under pressure.
You don't have teenagers in your house anymore. I like the way you danced around the 6 to 7 interval there.
I know what that is. Yeah, no.
Okay.
My
Okay.
son's now 22 years old, a senior at Miami of Ohio, and he's getting ready to start his last season of lacrosse. So I have road trips to Bloomington. I have road trips to Knoxville. Obviously, Western Michigan is about 3 hours from here. I forgot the town they're in. Also,
Kalamazoo.
what's that?
Kalamazoo, I believe.
Yes. And also, I have trips to obviously Oxford, Ohio, to catch some home games as well. And then when they play in the conference tournament, that's in Minneapolis. So I'm getting ready to put a few miles on the old car.
Yes, you are. VU Peary says it is nice and critical to see Leverett get some productive minutes recently. Is a big man, SEC legend, and NBA champion. If you could tell Leverett 3 things to increase his effectiveness as we approach the second half of the conference season, what would those be?
Well, he's also number one. His footwork has to get better, right? From a lateral standpoint. I got Kansas this weekend, and their big guy, Kansas, and I don't expect Leverett to ever get this good, but Kansas is so good defensively because their big guy on the back end, I forget his name. They switch everything, and most teams, they'll take the big and screen with the guard. He does a really good job of staying in front of a guy, right?
Mm.
Until help can get there. I'm not saying that Leverett needs to do that, but in case of an emergency and the guard gets picked off, he's got to be able to move his feet 3-4 slides each direction to contain this guy until help can come, or somebody can step into the lane, or they can switch back, right?
Yeah.
He's going to have to learn how to play faster at this pace. So that means that he's got to be able to run better as a big, right? And he's got to work on his explosiveness. And when I say that, I don't mean, he's got to be able to jump higher. I'm talking about the second and third jump to when you come down, back up, come down, back up. Now, how many rebounds are tipped that you can get up on the second or third jump and go up and get it because your second and third jump is more explosive than even somebody that is taller than you?
Okay, let's see. Steve, VU19 or VU98. Can VU get to the next level, whatever that means, primarily through the portal? Or does it need to focus more on high school talent? What balance would Byington like to have between portal and high school long term?
I think not just Byington, but most teams would love to have 4 or 5 core guys. That's what he did with Nickel, McLaughlin, Tanner, right? You'd love to try to take that core for 2 to 3 years, right? Yeah. Number one. Number two, you got to be able to bring in guys from the portal. You can't just ignore the portal and just think it's going to work. It's not. But you've also got to be able to have like a Tyler Tanner, a guy that you can bring in and hit a home run on and develop and watch what he's doing. Is that going to happen all the time? No. But if you bring in a freshman or two that are really good players, right, those guys can step in their freshman year when the older guys get hurt, and all of a sudden their sophomore and junior year, these guys are ready to contribute, right? You got to have a good mix. And that's why it's so difficult. Not only these coaches got to be coaches, but now they got to be general managers. They didn't have enough time in the day as it was just being a coach. But you still got to go out and recruit. You still got to bring in guys that you can develop. And you recruit guys out of the portal too. That's the funny thing is he talking to these coaches about how they got to recruit their guys every year again because they just put their name in the portal. So it's got to be a good mix, but you got to have, older guys coming from the portal, period. But you also got to bring in guys as freshmen that you got to be able to develop. And occasionally you may hit a home run and get a Tyler Tanner or somebody that kind of went under the radar that technically is underpaid for the production that they're getting.
Charleston alum, with Miles and Collins out, good coaches are going to scheme Tanner out. How do we respond?
I would expect, because of like what you said, with what they did late against Kentucky, they're going to have to really change how they play the game throughout the full 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. So just from my experience and what I've dealt with, coaches look at games in like 5-minute blocks, right? Because Honestly, that's how the game goes now with TV and TV timeouts. So they look at those blocks, right, between TV timeouts and having to call timeouts. So, and here's the other part that makes it difficult, because this time of year, you're trying to practice as much as possible, but as little as possible, if that makes sense. Because you're trying to keep these guys off the floor, right? And try to reduce the amount of stress you have going on in practice because of just how much stress you have. And it's not just physical stress, but it's mental stress, which then leads to physical stress, and the body breaks down. But because of now these injuries, I would expect to maybe see some more zone defense, right? Possibly on some of these teams, take their best player and look to double team and take the ball out of his hand and see if, like boxing one type stuff, to see if other guys can beat you. But the biggest thing this team has to do is not about schemes. It's not about junking up the game. It's about they have to rebound better, period. And that's everybody, right? And this was something that I was looking at. Tyler Harris can't go into a game at 6'7" and have 0 rebounds. Tyler Nichols got to give me more than 3 a game. Okereke can't have 1. Washington at 6'10" can't have 2. That just can't happen, right?
Yeah.
This is everybody. It's not just the bigs. Go get us rebounds. This is guys got to start now. If you contest a 3, you've still got to turn around and come in and protect the elbows of the free throw line. You can't just stand on the perimeter and think, okay, maybe I'm going to get out for a fast break. We've got to now start limiting the productivity of our opponents, not only on second chance opportunities, but in the paint. And that's the biggest thing. You go and look at that Texas game, the Florida game, and the Arkansas game. You got out-rebounded. You got outscored in the paint. Huge. Arkansas, you got outscored in the paint by 28, right? Texas, you got outscored in the paint by 16. These teams are going to have some length. So this is a responsibility of everybody now. You got to start locking down the paint, force a team to beat you from the perimeter, and then if you can, you've got to limit them to 1 shot. If you can do that, as you saw in the Kentucky game, you only shot 40%, but you won, right? So that's the thing. Defense travels. You really got to start
rebounding and
focusing.
turnovers is how they won that one.
Yeah,
and shooting free throws better. Yeah.
But even through all these losses, they've still done a nice job of minimizing their turnovers.
Yeah.
But it's just their defense fell apart, got picked apart. And I think, quite honestly, the Arkansas game, they kind of felt sorry for themselves. And basically, Arkansas did to them what Vanderbilt then finally, after coach, and I'm glad I went the whole way without mentioning, but now mentioning it. The coach called the team out, talked about how embarrassing it was. And to me, this says volumes about this team. They care, they have heart because they've responded. And they did to Mississippi State and Kentucky what Arkansas did to them. And now they're back on track. This Ole Miss game, regardless of where it is going to be a test, but so is every other game in the SEC, period.
Anchor down Douglas, similar to the question above on Leverett, what would Will tell Jalen Washington to focus on down the stretch?
Same thing, man. I can't have a guy when he comes in, to only get 3 or 4 rebounds. He's so important to this team. I think he is a crucial part. I think that he needs to continue to be more consistent and not up and down a little bit, right? To the point where Mark feels comfortable playing him more minutes, because we need him to play more minutes, quite honestly. And I think he's a solid get by Mark, but I need him to be more consistent from game to game. And what I mean by that is defensively and on the boards, right? The last game, I think he had 7 rebounds. I'd love to see him over this next stretch of games average between 7 and 9 rebounds a game consistently on a nightly basis.
All right, got time for a couple more. Getting texts from my wife about reminding me about the airport run that is coming up. So I'm going to skip down. I won't get to everybody today. My apologies. It's not personal. Dane Henshaw, which players have surprised you most so far, both good and bad?
Everything for the most part is, for the better. To see Tyler Tanner make the jump that he's made after last year, I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought we were going to see improvement, but not like this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to brag, but it kind of reminds me of, going into my junior year after my sophomore year, you know, my sophomore year wasn't even as good as Tyler Tanner's freshman year. But it's just the of now he's the go-to guy. I didn't see that coming. I mean, I knew
Yeah.
how good he was defensively. I knew how well he takes care of the basketball, all that stuff. But just now the way he plays and the confidence he plays with, I didn't see that, right?
Yeah.
And now the big thing is our MVP is going to be the athletic trainer. He's got to keep these guys healthy. He's got to bring these guys back in. That's the bottom line.
All right, last one, and then we'll get out of here. Anchor down 2401. What are the chances Tanner stays in another year as opposed to opting for the draft?
As good as he's played, I'm not sure he's ready for the NBA yet. I think he needs one more year of seasoning, quite honestly. That's just my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that everybody's going to talk about is his lack of size. It's just what it is, right? That's the big issue with Pavia now, right? After he went to the Senior Bowl and 5, 9, and 7/8, that's all anybody's going to talk about. Same thing with Tanner. And I think one more year will kind of help eliminate that stigma of, small guy. There's plenty of small guys in the NBA, but I think that, he needs to prove now that as you see this continual improvement, now then you're talking about a guy I think at the present moment is and listen, I think he's currently, this is in my opinion, a late first rounder, right? Early second rounder. And because of NIL, teams are now starting to guarantee second round contracts to get guys out of college, right? But at the end of the day, I think that if this guy stays in school one more year, he's a lottery pick.
Yeah.
And it used to be anytime you were a first round pick, you go because that's 4 years guaranteed. But because of NIL now, I don't say that anymore. Now, if you're a guaranteed lottery pick, oh yeah, you're gone. But because of what he can command going into NIL next year, just because he puts his name in the portal doesn't mean he wants to leave. Okay?
Right.
I think he wants to stay. But you put your name in a portal for a reason because it gives you leverage. Right? But what we need to do is, hey, guess what? We're talking about NIL again. Mark wants to be in a position to where he can lock him up to where he has no interest in putting his name in the portal. And that's where we, Nashville Basketball Initiative, and you watching and everybody else come into play.
Will, I've enjoyed it today. I've got to get out of here. I know NBI, way to contact you guys is through Robert Sampson, which is robert@nashvillenil.com. Anything else you want to say on the way out about the Nashville Basketball Initiative?
Yes. We've obviously seen that the NIL matters. It makes a difference, right? But at the end of the day, NIL isn't just about big fish. And when I mean big fish, about let's go find a couple billionaires, millionaires, whatever it may be. I know Mark Cuban's been huge with what he's done at Indiana, but it's just not about Mark Cuban, right? It's a numbers game. The more numbers we have, the better we're going to do. Whether it's a sidewalk fan, it's a big fish, it all matters. It all adds up. I always use this example when we're talking to people. If we can go find 100 people to give $1,000, that's 100,000. If we can go find, 1,000,000 people to give $1,000, what is that? 10 million?
I think it's 100 million, a billion.
So, I know my math's not very good, but it's a numbers game, right? That's all it is. And that's why I came up with the Nashville Basketball Initiative with Robert Sampson, because, yes, our pool is smaller than Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, because we only have, 8,000 undergrads? I get it. But at the same time, though, there's been plenty of people that have graduated over all these years that we're trying to target. And Nashville as a city has all these businesses that want to be involved. Because, yes, we have professional football, professional soccer, professional hockey. Got to be careful. We might have professional baseball soon if we're not, I know there's a lot of people that want it, but when you talk about basketball, and I say this all the time, no disrespect to Lipscomb, who's doing really well, Belmont, but if you want to see basketball at the professional level, the SEC is professional basketball. And I'm not saying a team is professional, but every single team in the SEC has professionals, guys that are going to play in the NBA, and a lot of them. And in order to see that, you got to go to Memorial. And that's the approach we're trying to take to get people to kind of buy in and come and see this and come see the excitement. Because this team is exciting. They're fun to watch. They play their ass off. And I love Mark and what he's done for this university in such a short period of time. But we also got to keep him as well.
Will, got to run. Thank you for your time. Hope to do this again soon.
All right. Birdie said she's sorry about creating all the noise and the fact that I had to let her out to play with the dog. But you got to get going because it's just, we all know how important it is for you to be on time to pick your wife up at the airport.
We accept her apologies. And hey, also thank you to Sylvan Park Ventures for sponsoring Will's involvement here with the podcast and the site, and of course, the Wash House for presenting basketball season here. For Will Perdue, I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for watching the Vandy 247 podcast presented by FanDuel.
Go Doors.